Welcome to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast brought to you by Success Without Sacrifice. I am your host and coach, Cherie Sauer, and here on the podcast, we are on a mission to revolutionize the way women in insurance do business. We will be interviewing women who are changing the face of insurance, as well as giving you tips and inspiration to grow your agency to new heights without sacrificing what is most important to you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast. I'm your host, Cherie Sauer, and today I have Beth DeLaForest with me. Beth, thank you so much for being here. You came highly recommended by Teresa Kitchens, and I love her podcast, so I figured I couldn't go wrong. Beth and I were just chatting a little bit beforehand. For those of you who don't know, I'm in Washington, which our whole state is pretty much on fire. We're surrounded by fires. And so we were talking about insurance and, just some of the hard stuff with that right now. And, Beth, will you just introduce yourself, tell our listeners who you are and a little bit about your background?
Sure. So my name is Beth, and I own Aspire Insurance Group. We have two locations, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and we also do right in Illinois. We are an independent brokerage. We call ourselves a boutique brokerage because we're very high touch, and we are actually only referral based. I've been in the industry for 23 years. My first 10 was writing for a State Farm agency. And my last 13 have then been on the independent side. I started my book of business scratch in 2010. And then in 2014, I purchased my book of business that I built and started Aspire. And we've grown organically until 2020, which is when we did our first acquisition. So we're a total team of 9 now.
Very cool. And so are you guys all virtual, or do you have actual offices?
So, all of it. So we actually have 2 employees in the Philippines. And then we have 2 office locations, and our offices all have a level of hybrid to them. They actually, and I will say that I know that's normal after COVID, but we were doing that starting in 2014. So we were built that way from the get-go. So we've had 9 years now to perfect the whole hybrid work situation, and it's something that works very well for us.
Good. That's awesome. So do your agents, do they have the option to be virtual, hybrid, or in person the whole time?
So we need to make sure our offices are covered. So our offices, we make sure that we have somebody in our offices Monday and then Wednesday and Thursday. Tuesdays and Fridays, everybody works from home. But then the agents have an opportunity to work, mostly all from home. They have a lot more of a flexible schedule. Obviously, when you're an operations team, you're going to have some element of people coming in, clients coming and going. So we'll need to make sure we're staffed for certain hours for walk-ins. Our Hudson office in Wisconsin, we actually are only by appointment there. But we have a location in Gilbert, Minnesota, which is a little bit more of a rural demographic. So we have to have someone always in that office for walk-ins because there's still, we do have a lot of walk-in traffic there still.
And are you are you personally in Minnesota or Wisconsin?
I live in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay, I was like, I can tell from the little bit of the accent there.
I know. I sometimes hear it myself, so I must be pretty sick.
I love it. I have family from Minnesota. So, okay. So tell us, so you started as a receptionist at State Farm. Mm-hmm. What kind of spurred, what was the decision to be like, oh, I think I want to go out on my own. I don't want to do this anymore. Walk us through that.
Yeah. Well, so being at State Farm for 10 years was an awesome training ground. I learned really solid, good operations from an agency perspective. And you learned in a really simplistic environment because when you write for a captive company like that, you only have one company and one option. And so you just learn your fundamentals really well. But the thing that I learned was, number one, I wasn't interested in being a State Farm agent. Like the programs that they had available to become an agent were not something that was appealing to me because it was all about quotas and selling so many types of policies, so many, each month. And that just doesn't resonate with me. And I knew that if it didn't resonate with me, I would have a struggle reaching the benchmarks that they put. And so one of the things that I've always said is I wanted to be in the helping profession. And so I feel like for me, moving into the independent or the brokerage side allows me to shop for people and give them suggestions and find the company that I feel like is their best fit and really be in more of an advisor role than a sales role. So I feel like I'm in a helping profession in that regard. Not only that, but when you are in a captive type of environment, you're very restricted on what you can write. Whereas when you're on the independent side, I can just work on connecting with people, helping people if someone has a problem, or I can just say yes and I will always figure it out. So it was the right fit, and I had my fundamentals down enough that the timing was good.
So I'm curious, so you said that you left State Farm and then you bought a book of business?
No. So I started scratch from zero, which is a very fortifying experience, I guess you could say. I mean, since we're having fires, I feel like I was refined in a lot of fire going through the process of starting from zero. I also started from zero when my kids were 2 years old and 3 years old. So glut for punishment is what I'd say.
Okay.
So I first started at an independent agency that allowed me to have first right of refusal of my book of business. So I actually never planned on leaving. And I have friends at this agency that I built it and have a lot of respect for them. But for me, I had a real defined culture in my head of what I wanted to see. And it was a culture of freedom and a culture of, as a woman, like starting out on your own and launching a business when your kids are so young, I don't really feel like you have to choose between being a present parent and a career. And so I kind of created that environment so people that came into the organization were able to plug in and not still be able to have like a really fulfilling life or be there for their kids in all their events and that type of thing, but still have a really viable opportunity from a career standpoint as well.
I love that. And it's interesting because I've talked to a couple of people and, given that insurance has been such a male dominated industry, and it was, I don't know if this is the right word, but like it's my way or the highway kind of thing, not a lot of flexibility. And so now that there's women leadership and women, female agency owners, we're seeing more of this. Pretty much everybody I have interviewed so far, I would say, has kind of that same story. Like they either worked for captive agents or they worked for something else, but they had this vision of this culture that they wanted to create and to be able to create flexibility. And for women too, especially like, for men, I feel like men, when they work or they're CEOs, that's all they are. And they have a stay-at-home spouse, or their spouse is working but still taking care of the house. When women are working in their careers, they do both and they juggle both. And the responsibility and the pressure, and especially if you're put into a high pressure like sales position, that, and that works great for some people, but for a lot of people it doesn't. So, I love that you went into it with that, like wanting to create that culture. I'm curious. So starting from scratch, walk us through kind of that process. Like, what did that look like? How did you go about that? Because I'm sure there's many people that are listening who are maybe trying to make the same decision. And you're the first one I think that we've had on here that's actually started from scratch. So I would love to just kind of hear your process and your journey and anything that you want to share for anybody that's listening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I learned a lot of lessons when I was at State Farm. For instance, they used to buy leads. First of all, I was starting scratch, and I didn't have like some big budget to buy leads. But I also learned that buying leads kind of puts you on a hamster on a wheel, because the people that are looking to purchase online, and shopping in that way they're not looking for a relationship. They're the people that are going to reshop that same way in probably another 6 months. And so your retention goes down. So you have to then keep your sales on the front end going. And so you kind of put yourself in like a hamster on a wheel, because you got to keep the leads coming in, because all the leads that you wrote 6 months ago are shopping and going out the back door again, because they were never really interested in your advice or a relationship. And so I really kind of learned what that cycle of buying leads most times, not all the time, but most times looks like. So I knew I wasn't going to do that. I hate cold calling. I will actually totally do pop-ins, like walk in to businesses, or I will even go door knock at homes. Like, that doesn't bother me, but I hate cold calling, probably because I hate it when people do that to me.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that was like really pushed at State Farm, was the cold calling. I even had at one point a program that they had me running that was telemarketers that would call and then transfer me warm leads. So I learned that sales are very antiquated, and how we're taught to do sales is antiquated. It's also not congruent to me. Like, how, so you can have all the sales scripts, all the things in the world, but you really have to stay true to yourself, and you are naturally going to attract like attracts like. So you're going to attract the people that you're naturally going to be a good fit in doing business with. So I just chose to leverage relationships that I had developed over the time that I had at State Farm. One of the key relationships first starting out was I was one of the founding directors of a nonprofit dog rescue, and they would refer leads of their adopters, because the breeds that I was specific in rescuing were pit bulls and Rottweilers. And there's a lot of insurance companies that have breed discrimination lists. And so I made sure I had contracts with companies that did not have breed discrimination tendencies, or they didn't have the list. So then that was one, funnel, I guess you could say. Other than that, I really just spent time networking, but doing it in a way where I wasn't going into networking thinking, what am I going to get out of this? I went into it like, what am I going to give? What am I going to learn? Who am I going to connect with? And I felt like when I went into it with that headspace, I just really naturally connected with the right people and just started building good referral partners. I learned real quick and I pretty much already knew this, but with partnering with State Farm agents, because they only have one company and one option. If they get a square peg and it doesn't fit in their round hole, right, that's a great opportunity for me. So I, nurtured some relationships with some agents that I had respect for. And so that was also a really good way to grow. So yeah, it's all been relationship leveraging, and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense with the leads that they would, because they are going to shop around. People shop with who they know, like, and trust. And I actually had a friend who used to be an Allstate agent, and we switched our insurance to him because we knew him, we liked him, we trusted him, and then he was no longer there. And then it wasn't long before we switched our insurance over because we didn't have that personal touch anymore. And so it's really interesting that how important like building those relationships are and keeping those relationships, instead of just buying leads. And I feel like this is one of the things I see the most in insurance groups is like, where do you get your leads? How do you get your leads? How do you get your leads? So, and too, I think everybody wants that like immediate success and sales and all the things, and networking and relationship building is a long term. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think too, and like you said, you have to stay true to who you are and what works for you, because what works for some people, like some people don't want to go door to door, right? And they would be much more comfortable on a phone doing cold calls. So understanding your personality, and I think even like your team members' personalities too, right? So I'm curious. So, okay, so you built the book and then you had to purchase the book of business.
Yeah, I know.
I was reading that in your description and I was like, wait a minute, what? Okay, so explain that. You touched on it a little bit, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty traditional, arrangement, you know, when you build it, and then if you want to leave, if I would say most contracts don't have a first right of refusal even in it. Most agents don't have ownership in their book. And frankly, from an owner standpoint, like I don't offer that in the agent contracts that I have. And the reason is because I'm not looking to build agents that are going to leave and start shops, number one. But the other part is it actually kind of devalues your book of business. And if like when you get your agency evaluated, they actually would back out the value of that person's book of business. So it's not even included. And you really do end up spending like a lot of time pouring into people for them to grow and develop. And it's your team that's usually putting quotes together, and it's your team that's servicing most of the time. So that's why I just so happened to run into that contract, you know, and have negotiated that. Actually, it was advice of an attorney that I had at the time, so I'm so thankful for him. But yes, so I did have to buy my book of business. I mean, it was at a fraction of the cost it would be if I did an acquisition. And honestly, I'm really okay with having to buy it like I did, because, you know, I was there for 3.5 years, but, I went from the captive side to the independent side, and I'm just telling you, like, the captive side is like riding a tricycle, you know, and the captive side is like, you know, you're, you know, I don't know, like you're in some bike race, like a triathlon, you know, like they're just not the same thing. And so I actually remember when I first started, my book of business, being like, oh my gosh, how have I been in insurance for 10 years? And I really didn't know insurance. I knew a company, but now, so I almost had to relearn insurance, number one. And then number two, I really love commercial insurance. That's my passion. And, you know, so I really had to learn commercial because State Farm's very limited in what they do, whereas I wanted to just have the ability to say yes to whatever came my way. And so, you know, now I can go to a salvage yard or a golf course and I'm good. I know what I'm doing, but it takes time to build to that. So they really did build my knowledge base on the commercial side. So I feel like that's worth what I paid.
So with the commercial side of it, I'm curious, so you said you're referral only, but are you going out to companies and building relationships with them, or is it mostly just referral now?
It's, you know, well, I did do some door knocking, a couple months ago, but I actually just did it to help a commercial banker that's in our area who she needs to get out and do some door knocking and build some relationships. And she was scared. I'm like, I'll just go with you. We'll do it together and it will be fun. And it was fun. We had a really good time. And, but honestly, right now it's really referral based. We have a lot of agents that just do personal lines that will send things to us. And actually that commercial banker that I just mentioned, she sends accounts to us. One actually that we are just closing here in a few days. So, I'm not opposed to going out, but really our pipelines have been, you know, we're not hair on fire, but we're growing at a really sustainable, reliable clip that has not changed much in the hard market. Maybe we've had a couple months of downturn, but this last few months have been crazy good. So I'd rather have like slower, consistent growth where my team's hair is not on fire and really high retention, because then everybody's happy, you know, rather than like pushing for the next number. The other part too is the more you push for numbers, the more the emphasis gets put on the number versus the quality of the client that you're dealing with. And I want my people to love picking up the phone, talking to our clients,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious for you, when you started, did you, always when you start a business, right? Like you have values and your intentions and your goals. And did you have a specific like target market or a type of people or a niche? I know you do commercial, but when you started, what was kind of like your vision?
Yeah. So, so I knew culturally what I wanted from an internal standpoint, meaning, we're really innovative. We use a lot of technology to lighten the burden. Like we automate all of our repeatable tasks. We use automation as much as we can in order for our team to be able to be more personable with our clients. So that's always the thought process behind any technology that we're using. And most of our industry, even now, it's getting better, but it's just still pretty antiquated. And so being on like the front end of what's happening in the industry is really important to me. And then team is really important to me. That's a huge core value of ours, because one of the things I ran into when I was building my book of business was, there's a lot of strife between sales and service, and you can't have one without the other. And so I just have zero space for distension between those two. Like you have to figure out, there's a natural tension, which is actually a good thing, but you have to be respectful of that relationship. And I just saw a lot of unhealthy situations between sales and service. So team is a huge core value of ours. Growth, but not growth as in like make the business bigger. We approach it from a holistic, so personal, professional, and then we want to grow the agency with quality. And then the last one is raving fans. So we want our clients to have an awesome experience and to kind of have like a tribe vibe type of feel. And so I knew that was that was at the core of what I was doing. But I never stopped to define what the perfect client would be. I would say for me, it was more that, they needed to be a good fit for us, as in like they're looking for a relationship. They are open to our advice. Price is important for in insurance. It is, and I will never say that it's not, but I want someone to be I want them to care about the coverage that they have, because, if you end up just going to the bottom line pricing, as soon as something bad happens and you don't have, car rental or whatever it is on your policy, you hate me for that. And so, like I'm the bad guy then, even though I was the good guy when I saved you $5, so, but I would say I've almost thought of that question as in, what does our ideal client say to us? And so that to me is easy to define. Our ideal client says, well, what do you think? What would you suggest? And they lean into our professional opinion. So that's how I would kind of answer that.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's a great answer. Because then it's not about just shopping for the cheapest price. They actually want the coverage that they want. I was actually just talking to an agent for business insurance, and he was kind of breaking down some of the different things: general liability, professional liability. And I had business insurance I owned a gift box company prior to, and so he was just kind of talking through some of the different things, and I was like, I didn't realize that there was like a difference. I don't know that I had the right coverage before. So, I didn't realize that there were like two different, kind of spans. Yeah. And so that education is really important to make sure that people are covered in the right way, because otherwise you're paying for insurance, and what good is it doing you if it's not the right coverage? So we actually, with the fires that just happened here, literally as I'm watching the smoke in the air, I'm like on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, does our insurance cover fire? If we have to leave our RV and it catches on fire, and you like really start to like stop and think of like, am I covered? Luckily
Yes.
our agent is a RV specific for people who live in RVs full time. So I was pretty sure that we were good, and he was very educational, very helpful. But I'm thankful for that instead of just, going on and finding like the cheapest price.
Yes.
And so, it's worth paying the extra $5 or whatever it is to have somebody that's going to be there to really take care of you. You had mentioned your core values. You were saying that team is really important, team culture. Mm-hmm. What specific things do you do to make sure that your team culture is where you want it to be?
Oh gosh. This is an area I have a really heavy pour into. First of all, we talk about our core values all the time. So it's a part of like our just normal dialogue. I think that there's a lot of companies, that to me is just a basic, but there's a lot of companies, one, that have so many core values, there's no way you can memorize them. Or two, they say what they are, but then they don't operate by them, or they don't talk about them again. And I feel like in order for it to be, for your culture, you have to be intentional for your culture to be a reflection of what your core values are. So one is I run an operations meeting every Monday morning. That's just a time for all of operations to come together, and we start things out with one simple question: what have you done in the last week to create a raving fan? So we're together as a team, and we're talking about raving fans, and we share some experiences, that type of thing. We have an agenda that we go through. We have an all-team meeting every Wednesday afternoon. And we have an agenda we go through, but we start out by sharing wins that we've had in the past week. So just trying to keep everyone in a mental headspace of looking for the little wins. I don't care how small they are. Sometimes our biggest wins are the little tiny ones. We also do something called Friday 15s. So I have all my team members have a 15-minute slot on Friday, and then I go into team's room, and everybody has 15 minutes, and we just talk personal stuff like, what are you doing this weekend? How was Emma's birthday party? Or, how was your brother's flight home? Whatever it is. We just talk. And I actually take notes during that time because I want to make sure that I'm asking like questions of what happened, and sometimes it's hard to remember all the things you talked about. We also do two things every day. We do team check-ins. We do team check-ins at 8:30, and we also do them at 1:30. And that's a time I don't run those. My agency manager does. But the intention is to make sure everybody is at an even point by the end of the day. So if there's one person that has an inordinate amount of work to do, everybody else can come in alongside them, and they can delegate and pull in for the help that they need so that they can leave their workday feeling like it was still a win, not like they have a lot of burden or that they're going to lose sleep over the workload that they have.
Yeah, I love that, because otherwise they take it home with them.
They do.
Right?
They absolutely do. So I have I have a couple other things that I do, but one of them is that once a month, in replacement of the Friday 15s, we do an all-team training. So like right now we're working through, we just got finished with Darren Hardy's Insane Productivity. He has like a 12 module series. And then he has like some bonus materials, and we're going through, his bonus materials right now for training. Other than that, we just have, get-togethers for, the whole team to get together every, few months, whether it's just for a dinner and then we do a big fall planning event every October. So we do, 2 check-ins daily, one at 8:30 and then the other one is at 1:30. And, for check-ins, what we do is the operations team meets, and my agency manager runs this. I do not run this. And they all just review what they have on their plate for the day and kind of delegate from there. So if there's one person who has maybe a larger workload and might have a hard time getting everything completed by the end of the day, they kind of reshuffle around tasks as needed. And then they do another check-in at 1:30 to say, okay, what's come in during the day? What questions might I have? What do I need to reshuffle things again to make sure that I get out of the day, leave for the day without feeling like the workload is pulling at them. So it's a very team approach. Everybody does have their own specific roles, but then everybody is cross-trained. And so we, focus on coming alongside each other and kind of, we call them like be little arm floaties. Sometimes you need that. And then the last thing that we do is we do a team training once a month that replaces my Friday 15s. And we're going through, we just got done going through Darren Hardy's Insane Productivity. And then we're on to some bonus material that he had in that suite of products. So, that's kind of a snapshot. Other than that, every few months we do try to get together as a team for, dinner. We've done some different things like online, bingo, where the bingo card has like things you might not know about this person and everybody has to figure out, who belongs in what square and that type of thing. And then October's we start our planning for the year. So we have a big, fall planning event in October.
Fun. Oh, I love it. And because some of you are virtual and you're in different states, do you all come together in one state?
Other than those in the Philippines, yes. So everybody will meet at our location up in Gilbert. I happen to have purchased the building in 2021, and so I have a vacation rental on the top of the building now. And so we'll stay up there. There's 4 bedrooms and a couple bathrooms. So those of the people, those of the team that live there, they just go home. But those of us who come in from Wisconsin have a place to stay. And then the people from the Philippines will just we'll open up a Teams link and they join us that way.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you said was you have a holistic approach. So it's not about agency growth, but it's more about personal, like you said, personal growth and like professional growth. I love that. I'm curious, do you have a budget for people or like, what does that look like? How do you support your team members in that way?
Yeah. So I do a couple of surveys throughout the year. Just asking, how are they feeling professionally, personally? We make plans, so they all have written plans of like where they are now, where they want to go, and then we do action items to get them from point A to point B. So they have, their plan 5 years down the road of where they want to be. I know where they want to be. And so we'll do like, for instance, my Whitney on my team is a good example of this, but she wrote out her plan. I kind of gave them a template so that they, I don't just tell them go make a plan, but there's certain questions I want them to ask so that I can help them. But one of her goals is to, right now she's a CSR and she wants to grow her knowledge to being really a full account manager with a CSR underneath her. And then futuristically, she'd like to do some type of like hybrid sales account manager role. And so it was super funny. We sat down, she knew exactly where she wanted to go on a Thursday. And that Friday I got a message from Safeco that I had, and this, I never even knew I had this, but I had one free seat to their advanced, personalized account manager, school that was, I think it was 6 weeks long. And they would have to attend, 2 hours a day for, it wasn't 5 days, but it was, a week, but it was for an extended amount of time. And so I was able to sign her up for that, and she completed that just a few months ago. So we're able to just continue to grow their knowledge in a direction that they're wanting to go. And then personally, one suggestion that we've had is that they want to start a book club, which we will be doing in 2024. It's a little bit too much to take on in this exact moment. Um, but yeah, just kind of supporting them along the path that they would like to go. One of the things I do ask when we're doing reviews is like personal goals. And we talk about this a lot during October. So I'll know what their personal goals are and I will support them. So I mean, I know exactly where each one of them wants to be. And also we've sat down, even written out our own descriptions of what we consider, how we would define success, because otherwise we'll just accept the world's version of that, and that's not very fulfilling. So we do a lot of work like that.
I love that. And the asking them how they define success, because we find, so a lot of the women that I've worked with in the past, and especially business owners who have grown to multi six figures even, they get to this point where it's like, okay, I've chased. I thought this money or, this life, this success, what society says success is, was going to fulfill me. And then they look around and they're like, oh my, like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel out of alignment? Why do I feel this way? I have everything that I've ever wanted or desired. And it's like, well, is it what you wanted and desired and what you valued, or was it because that's what society says that you should value? And so I love that you asked your team members what that looks like specifically for them, and how you can support them in that. Because I think too, with with team members, like some team members want to be leaders and some want to be led, and you can't force somebody to, you can drag the horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? So allowing them to be like a part of the process and of their own growth journey too. I'm curious, how have you seen, so obviously you were at State Farm, you were at another independent agency. Is that personal growth side of it, and kind of some of the things you're doing, was that lacking in the other companies, or is that something you took from other companies? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, that's just purely me. It is not something I took, but it was something that I would have loved. It's kind of funny. When I first started the agency and I didn't have any employees, I wanted to learn about leadership, and I had a friend who had owned a business, and so she was trying to teach me leadership. And it was a very like patriarchal, not typical for me type of leadership. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I suck at this. This is awful. I'm never going to get this down. And it was when I started realizing what my leadership style is like. I am super high empathy. I'm more of a nurturing leader. I come under and I lift up, and I am fiercely protective of my team. I think if I just take really good care of my team, that they will take really care of the clients. And that's just comes just from me. But it took actually a long time to naturally get there though, because I wasn't familiar with what that looked like, and so then I wasn't sure about the effectiveness of it. And so actually after I finally realized how bad I was going to be at patriarchal leadership, I just kind of threw all caution to the wind and just decided to do it the way that comes natural to me. And that's where things really got to clicking, and where now it's like the favorite part of what I do.
Oh, okay. I love this conversation so much, because I think this is a key missing a key missing piece for people who are in leadership, especially females who are in leadership, because we live in a man's world, right? And like, I'm not a feminist or anything like that, but the reality is women have had to force their way up the ladder and to do and behave a certain way to be able to get there. But it's like, now you're there, you get to choose and you get to own who you are, and nobody gets to say the type of leader that you have to be, or leadership looks this certain way.
Yeah.
And I have found, just with the clients that we've worked with, is really digging into like personal values and priorities and understanding how you operate as a person, and then understand how your individual team members operate as people, because everybody is so different. And if we don't understand that, and I think that, the typical, like you're saying, patriarchal way is like, well, this is how it's done, so it needs to be done this way.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, not everybody functions that way. And then you start to have tension and conflict within your team, and then down to firing and letting go, which is not necessarily the right answer. So,
right.
Love it so much that you take this holistic approach. And I think a lot of the independent agents that I've interviewed so far either already are taking this holistic approach, or they're pivoting to taking this holistic approach, or they want to. They just don't maybe know how. Like step into their own power. So if you have like a tip or any advice you want to give around that, I would love to hear what you have to say.
I would say, I think the first thing that I see business owners, if I'm talking about a woman business owner, I think the first thing is to get to a point where you're leading out of like yourself authentically. Because I think there's one of the things I've seen, and I feel like this is getting better, but I can say even like 10 years ago is like I would run into women that were successful, and it's like so many of them take on male traits that are not authentic to who they are, because they have some perception that that's what they need to do in order to reach this level of success that they're going for. And I mean, I feel like that's just the path to everything unfulfilling, because the reality is the beauty of this is the journey. And when you lead authentically, then you're going to build a team that's the right match for you. So I would say just really starting to get to the nuts and bolts of like who you are first, because then you're going to build a team that's a reflection of you. Like I will tell you, my team from a cultural standpoint is a reflection of me, and any person that's building especially from scratch. So your team is going to be a reflection of you. So you really got to get clear on like who you are. And the other thing I would say, is let go of control. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm actually just not a control freak. I'm super visionary, big picture. I'm really driven. But I'm also really high empathy and collaborative. And I want everybody rowing in the same direction and feeling like they're heard and they have a purpose. So, I would say one of the biggest things that has been, that works in my favor is I don't have to control everything. I can let them do things their own way, and they still see success in it. And honestly, if they fail, they're not going to fail that way again. So even just giving them enough room to fail forward sometimes, because how many lessons have I had to learn that way? So just getting out of their way, which also I will tell you, if you can learn to do that, you work yourself out of a job a lot faster when you're not trying to control everything.
Yes. Yeah. And, it's interesting that you were talking about, females that you've met who have had careers, whether they're business owners or careers or whatever it is. And I experienced this in my own life of like chasing that success, and, we think that success is going to be fulfilling, but at the end of the day, it's not. And especially if you're living out of alignment with who you are, even if you have, a great team and you have the insurance agency and you have the revenue, or you have whatever it is, there's still this like level of feeling out of alignment. And I think you're exactly right. It comes back to that, like not being authentic to yourself. And one of the things that you had said in your application was your business, lives, and income will only grow to the edge in which we grow. Business, lives, and income will only grow to the edge in which we grow ourselves. And it's funny that I read that today, and I was like, that's so funny, because literally yesterday I created a post, like personal growth equals business growth.
Yeah.
Like and fulfillment and freedom as well,
Yeah.
right? So if you are not personally growing, but you have success and you're feeling off or out of alignment or frustrated or whatever it is, it's because there's a missing link of the personal growth aspect.
Yeah.
So, and this is one of the things that we really love to focus on too, whether that's with agency owner or within team members. If you're having conflict with a team member, it's possible that they're lacking some sort of fulfillment. And people will say, I just need more money or I want more money, but really there's like something deeper that they really want. Maybe it's safety or security or, whatever it is. So, love this conversation so much. I love that you support your team, in the way that you do, and obviously, personal growth for yourself as well. So many good nuggets that you had to share today. Are there any last tips or little tidbits that you want to give somebody listening today?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm like the girl that can talk forever. So there's really nothing on the top of my head. I mean, I guess it would depend on who I'm talking to. But I would say, I guess maybe it's just that the joy is in the journey.
Yeah. Yes. It's in the journey, not in the destination.
Yes.
If we can shift our mindset and our perspective to that right there, the joy is in the journey, not in the destination, because we think it's in the destination when in reality, like, we have to find it in the journey. It doesn't matter what the destination is. It will never.
Like when you get to those, whatever the world perceives as a level of success, like it's actually very anticlimactic. You really learn in those moments, like, oh, that was actually the fun part of this was getting here.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And your business is valued at 7 figures and above. Is that right?
Yeah. Multiple 7 figures.
Okay. I just wanted to point that out because, you are successful. You have grown a successful business and you've done it in a way that feels good to you, and it supports your team. And so that's like our whole goal with Success Without Sacrifice is teaching women, like, you can 100% have success without sacrificing yourself or what is important to you.
Yes.
So you have proven that. And so I just appreciate so much, you being here, Beth. And if anybody, what's that?
I said, thanks for asking me to be here.
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm so glad that Teresa got us connected. Where is a good place for people to reach out to you if they just want to connect with you or they have questions or whatever that is?
Yeah. So, a few different ways. So maybe this is just so old school, but I'm still on Facebook. I don't know. I'm on Facebook. Beth DeLaForest is the name. So, you can check me there. Otherwise, websites is Aspire Insurance Group. It's ASPIRE Insurance Group. Otherwise, I do have a personal website with a blog and all that good stuff too. So that's BethDeLaForest.com. It's DELAFOREST.
Ooh, you have a personal website.
I do.
Okay, yeah. What's your personal website? I got to hear about this for a second.
So I just, we'll see what ends up happening with it. Right now, I have just kind of a little bit of like what I have going on with businesses and stuff since I started a VRBO after I bought the building up north. And then I have a couple like little passion projects. I am getting ready to launch a podcast, the end of September. So that's, there's a little launch video in there for that. And then,
what's your podcast going to be? Can you share?
Yeah. It's called Unraveling Success. Ooh. And it's interviewing successful entrepreneurs, but really sharing the stories, because I feel like one of the things I've really noticed is the past couple of years, I've started to get a lot more of attention about, the level of success, I guess, that I've reached, which is fine. But if you were to pull the curtain back and look at the years that it took to get to that point and all the bumps and bruises, it can be very like glamorizing to see the end result. But honestly, like the journey and all the scuffed knees and, nobody talks about that stuff. And I think as a like younger entrepreneur, we're really doing them a disservice because they need to understand, they need to understand that it's not all rainbows and, it's like fall down 10 times, get up 11.
Yeah, it takes time, and social media, we can get caught up in I made 6 figures in my first 10 months and, and all of this. And it's like, that is the exception, not the rule. Not to mention, you don't know what actually was profit. They could have made, 6 figures in revenue, but they could have also spent that in business expenses. So
yes. Oh my gosh, a million times over. That is one of my biggest pet peeves is people will ask me, or in the industry, they'll be like, oh, what's your volume? And it's like, it doesn't matter my volume. It should be, what is your profitability?
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter if you made $1 million. No. If you spent 1.1, you don't got a pot to piss in.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. And that's part of like really one of the goals that I love here is just to really break it down, like the ins and outs and the good and the bad and the ugly, because it is. And I used to have I had a different podcast, called The Balanced Mompreneur, and, almost every single person that I interviewed, they had to be over 6 figures. And I wanted to know, like, what was the process? Like, what did you do? How long did it take you? And every single one of them, it was the same story. It was like 3 years, started to make some money. 5 years, I was able to support my family a little bit. 7 years is when I hit, and it was, the big months, and I hit that 6 figures or above. But we don't hear that, and we just see the success stories, and you don't hear the ins and outs. And so I think you're absolutely right. We're doing people a disservice by making them think that they can hit, these 6-figure years and in a year even. Like, yes, it's possible, but what happened before that? What was your professional background? You worked for 10 years in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
It's not like you just started your company and then, it takes time. And so, and also with bigger businesses and bigger revenue comes bigger headaches too. So there's a lot more involved in that. It's not all, glamorous like, people make it out to be. So, thank you so much for sharing that. And I appreciate you being here, for your honesty. I would love to know when your podcast launches. I want to listen to that. I love hearing like the curtain being pulled back. I love business and just like hearing all the things. So, love it. When is it launching again, you said?
So actually my launch day is September 30th, which happens to be National Podcast Day.
Oh, okay.
So I was going to do it in the fall, but then when we were doing our marketing meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, September 30th is National Podcast Day. I'm like, we're totally going to launch that day. So
love it. Unraveling success. So that sounds amazing. I can't wait to listen. And let us know, tag us, and we will be happy to share about it as well. So thank you again, Beth, for being here. And we will talk to you all next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast today. We know there is a lot on your plate, so it means the world to us that you stopped in to give us a listen. We hope you will join us each week as we dive into topics such as mindset, goal setting, productivity, self-care, and so much more. We want to inspire more women to have success without sacrificing what is most important to them, and we need your help. If this podcast has inspired you, would you do us a favor? Would you take a minute to leave us a rating and a review or share with your friends? Let's change the face of insurance for women. Until next time.